Hey everybody, welcome back to Tanner's Books Beyond, coming at you today with the Diversity Awareness tag. Now this is a tag that I saw done by a few people last year when Diversathon first started out, and even though there's never a bad time to talk about diversity, I figured I'd do the tag now just so I could tie into Diversathon. Now all of these questions are about looking at the books you have and trying to find the diverse books and diverse characters that you've read about, and the goal being that hopefully you can pick a different book for each question. But the first question is simply, why does diversity matter to you? And that's really easy to answer. Diversity matters to me because it's reality. We don't live in a world where everyone is just a straight, able-bodied, neurotypical, waspy white person. There are differences in humanity. There's differences all over the place, and our literature and all of our media needs to be able to reflect that. Plus, seeing people like you in media and reading about people like you in literature, it can be really emotional and fulfilling. I mean, I've read so many stories, I've been some of those stories about reading about people from your marginalized group and seeing them be validated and exist and be fully fleshed out. That's really empowering, and literally nothing is lost when you're able to enable something like that. Now, question 2 is to pick a diverse author, and for this, I'm going with Hannah Moskowitz. She's quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. She is Jewish, she is bipolar, and she is bisexual, and from what I can tell, almost all of her books have bisexual main characters, and from what I can tell, almost all of her books have bisexual main characters as well, so that's great because #own voices. Number 3 is to find a book with a diverse main character, preferably from a different author, and that one's actually pretty easy for me to do, so I'm gonna go with Hero by the late Perry Moore. In this book, the main character, Tom, is gay, and this was actually the first book I ever read that had a gay protagonist in it. It wasn't until I was most of the way through this book that I realized how much I'd been missing by reading books that only had straight people as protagonists, and I still enjoy straight books quite a bit, but the fact that I'd never read anything that had a gay hero in it was just a revelation and a realization that I needed to start expanding my horizons and just start delving into all of the diverse books that were out there that I'd never really heard of, and I had to go searching for them. Number 4 is to find a book that is full of diverse characters. So for this one, I went with If You Could Be Mine by Sarah Farizan, and everyone is diverse in this quite simply because it's set in Iran, so everyone there is an Iranian Muslim. Also, a majority of the cast are queer. Most of them are gay or lesbian. I think a few might be bisexual, and there's also several major trans characters in this as well. So this is quite awesome for that whole scope of diversity that it has going for it. Number 5 is finding a book where the diverse character is not a stereotype, and so for this, I'm going with Huntress by Melinda Lowe. Now, when you think of Asian women, unfortunately, the stereotypes are either going to be a dragon lady or, you know, this kind of hypersexualized, exotic young woman. Fortunately, none of the characters fall into any of those stereotypes. Tyson and Katie in here, the main characters, they're great. They're fully formed characters. One of them is a scholar, and the other one is, she essentially starts off as a servant, and then eventually she becomes pretty much an action girl near the end. It's a known voices book, so you're not going to expect to see stereotypes here anyways. I mean, the whole thing, it draws from traditional Chinese folklore and mythology, so with that influence in there and going into it knowing that you're getting a genuine representation and genuine experience for it, even if it is a fantasy, you know that you don't have to worry about running across some really gross stereotypes in this kind of story. Number 6 is to find a diverse character that you can identify with, and there are 2 ways of going with this, because you can either find a character that you identify with even though you're of different diversities, or you can find a character you identify with because you're of the same diversity. So for the first one, I can say I identify with Edda from Not Otherwise Specified by Hannah Moskowitz, because quite often she is stuck between 2 choices, 2 options, or 2 groups. She doesn't really know which way to turn, and she always finds herself very much stuck in the middle. And not only myself, but I feel a lot of people can identify with that if they've ever been faced with difficult choices or not sure which way to turn when it comes to figuring out how your life is going to go. And then for the latter half, I'm going to choose Simon Spear from Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I wish I could have read this book in high school, that it was out when I was in high school, because I feel it would have helped me a lot. Reading this when I did back in September, I really connected with a lot of stuff that Simon goes through, how he tries to navigate the intricacies of coming out and who you're supposed to come out to first and who you should come out to at all, trying to figure out how you can possibly even get a date or get a relationship in high school, because he mentioned at some point that he wishes no one had to come out, that we could just be gay or be straight or be bisexual or ace or whatever. He wishes we could just exist without having to make it a thing, and then make things so much easier, and I totally identify with that. I mean, I've had to explain to some of my straight friends that it's hard for me to flirt and figure out how to date with people because I couldn't get the practice that they did in high school. And even now, I can't just walk up to someone and say like, hey, you're cute, want to go on a date? Because that person could very easily go, oh no, I'm not interested in guys, why are you even talk to me? And if I'm having this much trouble at 24, imagine how hard it was for me and Simon at 16. Number 7 is to find a book that has a relationship between 2 different diversities, and so for this one, I picked Labyrinth Lost, but I don't really want to go into detail for it because it's kind of a spoiler, the different diversities that end up getting together, so all I'll say for now is that it is adorable. and leave it at that. Number 8 is to find a character that is disabled either physically or mentally, and for this one I'm going to go with Run by Cody Keplinger, which isn't a surprise. I've been waxing poetic about it for the past while. One of the main characters in Run, Agnes Atwood, is blind, and the author herself, Cody Keplinger, she is also blind, so it's great because once again, it's an own voices book. It's a proper representation that you know is authentic and know is written well. Number 9 is to find a book with a queer character and bonus points if they're in a relationship by the end of the book. For this I'm going with Young Avengers, which has Billy and Teddy, or Wiccan and Hulkling in their superhero monikers, and they are a gay couple that's in a relationship. This is the second trade paperback of the first volume, the first run, so I'm picking this up because this is where their relationship is revealed and confirmed. They've been hinted at heavily for like the first 6 issues or whatever, and this is where they finally got into it. And then yeah, once they're confirmed, they're like the official couple of the series throughout the entirety of the rest of its runs and mini-series, all that kind of stuff. And even when the two of them end up going into different comic series, they're together, and they are relationship goals, essentially. And then question 10 is, how hard was it to find books and characters for these questions? I'm glad that I didn't do this before September, because I absolutely would have failed at everything. I would have had to shoehorn in Hero for all of the questions for this tag, because that had been really the only diverse book I'd read before Diversathon, before I was opened up to all of these other books and the importance of reading diversely. And even now, nearly every book I read, with a few exceptions, they're all stuff that I read for the previous Diversathon. Like, I haven't actually been reading as diversely as I wanted to since the last Diversathon. But like I said, I'm getting a lot better with it. I have so many great books lined up for Diversathon and beyond Diversathon as well, which is the important thing, is that this isn't just something that you stick into this 1 week or 2 week little area of time. This is something that you do for the rest of your reading life. If you were to come back to me in a year, yeah, I could give you totally different answers. I'd give you a lot more in-depth answers to stuff as well, because I've read a lot more diverse books. I mean, I changed things around, so now the stuff you see behind me is the stuff I've read. It's not my to-read shelf, but if you were able to see my to-read shelves, you'd see that almost half of the books I have on there are diverse reads, and that's only going to get bigger as the year goes on, because I am going to focus on and try and prioritize getting a hold of all of these awesome diverse books. And that sums it up for the diversity awareness tag. And as for tagging people, well, I would imagine that pretty much everyone needs to do this tag. You need to look at these questions and then look at your bookshelf and see what you can answer. See if you can answer everything with different books, because if you can't, or if those questions end up taking up all of the books on your shelf that you can consider diverse, if all you have are like 9 or 10 books that you can include, then you really need to reevaluate what you're reading. You really need to open your eyes and realize that there is a lot more out there. It's so much more interesting. There's so many interesting books that you can read if you start seeking them out, and seeking them out specifically because of the diversity that they have. But yeah, if you haven't done this tag yet, you definitely should. And if you haven't done it in a while, then maybe you should take another look at it, see how things have expanded on your bookshelf. And while you're doing that, I'm going to get ready for the next video. So I'll see you all later.